So Stan Burfield is going to read for us now. Stan, my hero. Yay, Stan.
Well, this goes back to 1989 with where Alan started his poem, or roughly then. It was just a situation that happened, and I got into writing about it, and it's not really that great of a poem, and I haven't had a chance to, after all these years, I haven't had a chance. I mean, I've got a million chances, but I haven't taken them to redo it. And lately I've discovered, after doing the open mic here for 4 years, I've discovered a lot of things I could redo to this, and oh well, I'll read it now. This goes, and Unretouched. This goes back to the days when we didn't know who Mel Gibson was yet. He was just a nice, ordinary guy. It goes back to the days of, well, what do we got here? Blockbusters, all that stuff. And it goes back to the days of when Linda and I owned a flower shop in Vancouver. And so that's how it starts out. Oblivious to beauty, having sold far too many flowers, I walked home one evening and flopped down exhausted on the couch to catch my breath, wanting to soon go into my room piled with papers and try to pick out some poems to mail. People have been telling me it doesn't take much, you just have to get started. But I'm always stalling because I keep thinking, who on earth would publish a poem of mine? For example, this one. I mean, just for starters, is it even a poem? Anyway, I decided they're right. It's time to start. So okay, I'll do it. But first I flicked on the boob tube. Mel Gibson. Great. I sat back. He was wearing armor, so I figured it must be that movie about Scotland he won an Oscar for, all those battle scenes. Okay, I'll watch it. But wait, what's he saying? Hang on, that sounds familiar. Oh, just great, that's Shakespeare. Mel Gibson was Shakespeare coming out of his mouth. I guess I'll watch a few minutes just for a laugh. Look at this, a real castle in the background, and that countryside, some stage for a play. Denmark, I guess. I remember reading a review of Mel playing Hamlet, Prince of Denmark. They said he did a fair job, just too physical if I remember right. But he looks pretty real. Lots of very realistic emotion all over his face, with the Shakespeareese coming out of his mouth at the same time. Must be hard to do, like patting your head and rubbing your belly simultaneously. A good actor. I can't see how Laurence Olivier could do it any better, even if he is a lord and has an English accent instead of an Aussie one. I wouldn't know the difference anyway. I suppose even if Mel is doing a good job of acting, it might not be the right kind, because Shakespeare is all poetry. So they say, anyway. So maybe you have to kind of do it in a sing-song voice, while patting your head and rubbing your belly. Who knows? I suppose there are experts. Anyway, I was kind of half listening while I was looking down at this apple I was peeling. I've got this thing now of peeling my apples, then eating the peelings. Suddenly I heard Mel say, with this kind of slow, inward-speaking voice, "To be or not to be?" I looked up. Who wouldn't, hearing that line and realizing it's not part of a joke? He was standing kind of absently in this underground area, low ceiling, stone arches all around, that sort of thing. But not a creepy place. Well lit, more like a place where there aren't any distractions and you can suddenly realize things. Well, I don't know how many times I've heard that speech. Oh, back in high school, and then people in movies who suddenly stand up in a bar and start reciting it from their old acting days, that sort of thing. And I've never understood it. But this time I was kind of standing there in that quiet place with Mel, trying to decide if it's better to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to sleep, perchance to dream, to die, to not be. It's kind of like, is it better to somehow get into the anxiety and randomness of life? Or should I just stumble home from work every day in a shocked daze and flop down and fall into the boob tube? It's funny, I was right there following his argument for the first time. Maybe because it was just Mel. But I guess this is a big conflict in me now. It bothers me that quite often I die after work, either in the TV or my computer game. I know that when I do, I'm avoiding my life. I'm avoiding exactly what Mel was saying, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. And I know I must accept the strangeness, be satisfied that this and not some other is my life. Be this person and make this life happen. I used to always think it's not possible to stop living, but just because you're watching TV, your heart is still beating, brain emitting things. But when I was young, I saw life as a body's, as a property of a person's body. Well, now that I've lived a bit longer, felt a bit more, I don't take the body as seriously. Now I like to think of the person first, and that the body is a property of the person, like trees are a property of a forest. So for a person to stop being is a lot different than a body not living. It's like when a person stops being, all that's left is the body, shoveling down apple peelings, staring at the boob tube. Well, anyway, at this point I was kind of sitting upright, staring at Mel, who was going over my argument with me. Standing up, really, while sitting down. I stood there till Mel stumbled out of the depths, then sat back as he wound up the story. Of course, predictably, Mel is a tragedy after all. Hamlet is a tragedy, which means by definition that in the end all the important people die. And of course they did, many in typically Shakespearean ways, drinking poison meant for someone else, that sort of thing. Well, I was in a hurry to get a video back to Blockbusters, an action thriller where everybody dies, but only if they're bad guys. And I only had 10 minutes to go before the big gong in the sky hits midnight, so as soon as I saw Mel on the floor, I shut off the screen, grabbed up the video, threw my coat on, and pumped my legs down the street. And now that I could see all my neighbors' real houses all around me, as I slid down the sidewalk, I thought, how odd that every main character in your play should have to die. As if their lives were that all-fired important. As if the meaning of their lives so overwhelmed just plain existence that it had to end at the right time and for the right reason. I couldn't imagine that happening to me. Life seemed tragedy enough while living. And then I imagined all those millions of other ordinary lives out there in the dark. And tromping down the street, I thought, like Mel, that this may be a random and overflowing world, but the best thing to do is to suffer at slings and arrows, maybe even the noblest, who knows. But we'll leave that for the likes of Hamlet. And I walked, feeling my movement, my sizeless self. I said, there's only me, and I looked around. Well, spring was in the night air. The stars were up. And even in the city of Vancouver, the full moon up there dropped so many megawatts down through the night that every ordinary thing felt magical. Like I was inside that movie somehow, or went through it to here. I was looking up thinking it was strange, because lately I've been noticing how blurry my eyes are becoming, with age, I guess. But it doesn't seem to matter a bit looking into that deep blue vault up there. Blur can't be seen at all, only the cool, endless sky all around like a dream, and me inside it, and it inside me, I guess. It was magic how mixed up I was getting to be.
To be or not to be, that is the question. Stan, can I just say something? This is my, naive approach. I think you have about 8 poems in that one, right? There were so many things that you could pull out, and yeah, I think you really could.